Alright, this is going to be a weird, long, rambly, badly paced video about how we got from here to here. Before I start, I need to clarify a few things. Firstly, this is going to be a historical analysis of how the modern right wing evolved to be where it is, how we ended up with the esoteric right, Twitterati type of situation. What happened on the internet? How did we get here? And because of that, it's a linear historical narrative which is inherently flawed, so you should be skeptical of everything I say and know that this is a simplification, some would say an oversimplification, and you should also that this is mostly based on my own experiences, what I, anecdotal evidence, one could say. It's not exactly the most sound historical analysis ever, but I'm going to do my best to explain how right-wing ideology evolved on the internet and where this all came from. How did we end up here? And to do that, we're going to need to go back to the past. To understand what these people think currently, we have to understand how they got to thinking that. To understand how to counter these dumb people, we got to understand why they think what they think, and in order to do that, we got to do some historical analysis. And where does this all start? What is the starting point? What is the birth? Comes from an unlikely source. This all began with Tom Cruise. Back in the day, long time ago in the 2000s, bloke called Tom Cruise, you know him, the actor, he's a Scientologist, and he made a funny video, not on purpose, he made a video for the Church of Scientology website where he rambles about how great Scientology is, and it's like incomprehensible, he seems insane, and it's very funny to watch. Although it's not that funny, it's just pretty funny, right? And because this is pretty funny, some people on 4chan, which at that time is mostly an otaku forum for like nerds and people who like anime and people who like comics and shit like that to hang out on, based on 2channel. I could go into the history of how 4chan came to be, but that's not really that relevant. But at this time, I'm trying to fight this misconception that 4chan was always and is always going to be a hotbed for Nazis. 4chan was not political very much, at least especially at the start. Poll was a containment board, right? Anyway, so Tom Cruise makes this video. It's funny, someone shares it on 4chan, people are laughing at it. Scientology finds out that people are laughing at this video and they take it down. And then people are trying reposting it all over the web, and Scientology, the Church of Scientology, is going around trying to shut it down. And this is like the Streisand effect. The more Church of Scientology tries to take down this video, the more people want to try and share it around, until eventually it becomes this thing. And this is based on what 4chan truly stands for, or stood for, which was everything for the lols, right? Doing what is funny. And it's way more funny to fuck with a big important person. If you fuck with a regular person, if you start fucking with a regular person, they're mostly just going to tell you to fuck off, and it's just boring, it's not interesting. But if you fuck with an important person who's not used to being fucked with, especially in this day, back in the day when 4chan were people who really knew the internet well, whereas most big corporations, celebrities, this sort of thing, didn't understand how the internet worked very well. So for this 4chan targeting the Church of Scientology, it was great because they're a huge thing. They don't know how to react. Everyone knows they're insane, right? Don't do anything to be Church of Scientology. Okay, for legal reasons, I can't say they're insane, but whatever. 4chan's targeting them, and eventually it turns into a whole movement, and it eventually becomes anonymous because they went out in the streets and they protested the Church of Scientology, and there were people in the streets chanting things like "Long cat is long," which is an old 4chan meme that no one remembers, but in general, 4chan was a place to congregate and post your Azumanga Daioh memes and shit. So, 4chan has a history of anti-establishment protesting and activism because it's funny to punch up at these people who aren't used to being punched. They don't know how to react. They do dumb shit because they don't know how to react. Okay, we've established this. Time moves on. The next thing that happens is the Occupy movement. 2009 financial crash happens, Occupy movement happens, Occupy Wall Street, if you remember back then, right? And again, this is where it's weird, is that I remember 4chan it was definitely not, I wouldn't say, homogeneously in support of Occupy. There were a lot of people who back in the day were like, saw Occupy as a bunch of hippies and a bunch of like trust fund kids who were basically doing activism as like a tourist exercise. But I would say the majority of people on the site supported Occupy. Why? Because again, it's funny. It's just fucking with the people in power and they don't know how to react. It was a funny thing to do. But Occupy was, as we know, a failure because of the failures of liberalism. Now, to clarify, in case you don't know what I mean when I say liberalism, liberals is not the same as leftists. Liberals are basically centrists who want to uphold the status quo. You could call them centre-left, who believe in capitalism. They want to keep capitalism with some minor social changes, right? And of course, the Occupy movement was about reforming the financial sector mostly, but there's images that get shared around about this. It's complicated. It's messy. All of this is complicated and messy. But essentially, because it didn't have the ideological framework of a hard left movement, it didn't have strong leadership, or it didn't have a direct target. They occupied these places, it was great, and then they didn't know what to do next, and they were way too slow because they didn't have the ideological framework to work from because they're liberals, and they didn't, so for example, let's say they occupy this place and they set up some ways for it to be self-sustaining, to start self-sustaining, like setting up some farming places, or they try and get food supply lines, organizing new ways to work based on collective ownership of the means of production. They didn't do any of that shit because they were liberals. They didn't understand the flaws in capitalism, and they were working very, very slowly due to various things. But 4chan noticed something which was called the progressive stack. Now, it's questionable whether this even existed. It's complicated. It's very complicated and messy. I want you to understand this. It's questionable whether this even existed, but the theory that was shared widely on 4chan is that the progressive stack was a system where the people who were allowed to talk were supposed to be, it was supposedly a way to allow the people whose voices were normally less heard to be the voices that were prioritized, as in terms of who would speak to the crowd. They would use or whose ideas would be debated. They would use a stack where, depending on your identity, i.e., depending on, for example, if you're black or gay, you would get pushed to the top of the stack because your ideas would normally be less heard. That was the theory behind it, and according to what 4chan saw, that was the reason why the movement failed, because they couldn't get anything done because they were too busy fucking with identity politics, as they called it, right? And because this was probably the biggest social movement they'd seen in their lifetimes, and so when 4chan saw that this failed, they were basically had a big disenfranchisement with liberalism. And then a website called Stormfront had been watching. Now, Stormfront was a website for literal neo-Nazis to hang out, and they had a forum, and some of them used 4chan, and some of them had basically noticed 4chan, they're getting disenfranchised with liberalism. They're very pro edginess, because people have been this is the thing, this is the reason why people mistake 4chan as having always been far right. People posting swastikas and saying edgy shit about killing people is not the same as actually having far right beliefs. It's just because of the way 4chan works as a system that if you take, let's say, Reddit is the opposite. So Reddit is some sort of democratic system where when you post something, people can upvote it or downvote it, and the more upvoted posts go to the top. So the posts that the most people like are going to be the posts that are most seen, which encourages Reddit to have a sort of lowest common denominator attitude. Something that is will appeal to the most number of people, will get the most upvotes, will go to the top and be the most popular. Whereas on 4chan, the way that the image boards work is through a system of bumps. Every time if you post a thread on a board, every time someone replies to that thread, the thread gets bumped to the top of the board, and then another thread goes on top and it gets pushed out, and then the next time someone replies, it gets bumped to the top of the board again. So 4chan and image boards encourage posts which cause the most discussion, which basically means the more controversial posts, the ones that have the most arguments in it, are going to be pushed to the top, which means more people see them, which means more people get in the arguments, and so on and so on. And so This encourages people to post outlandish shit because firstly, it's anonymous, so that there's no the risk in it, and secondly, the more outlandish shit you post, the more people that are going to be replying to your post, the more people that are going to, bump it to the top over and over again. So that's why there's lots of edgy jokes on 4chan, the anonymity plus the way the board is structured. The website is structured, image boards in general are structured. So Stormfront, they see that 4chan is a bunch of edgy people who like sort of extreme ideologies, and they're disenfranchised with liberalism, and they pull off what is the most successful raid in internet history. Stormfront, they raid 4chan, and 4chan, there's actually sadly not that much evidence of this error, like not that many screenshots and stuff, because it was all kind of happening under the surface. So a lot of Stormfront people were spreading literal Nazi propaganda on 4chan, and a lot of 4chan people believed it, but a lot of 4chan people didn't like it. And this is the problem, is that the people, once the Stormfront people, okay, I'm gonna have to use a slur here just because this is the way to be accurate to the vernacular of the site. They were called Stormfags, right? And so a lot of people didn't like the Stormfags. They were pissed off that they were coming to their site, and what ended up happening is they just left 4chan. The people who were pissed off that the site was being overrun by Stormfags, they just left 4chan, which meant the only people that were left on 4chan were the people who were generally okay with Stormfags invading their site. And this was the most successful internet raid of all time, because it successfully converted people from jokingly posting swastikas to actually having far-right beliefs. Then, time goes by. YouTube is becoming a bigger thing at this point, and here's an interesting connection. Because of this Scientology hate early on, 4chan had become kind of big into new atheism. This idea, religions are dumb and for stupid people, let's laugh at the religious people, because again, religious organizations are great targets for 4chan memes. They are big, powerful people who aren't used to being memed on and don't understand the internet. And so targeting religious organizations was a fun, lolsy thing for 4chan to do, and so atheism was a big thing on 4chan. And because of this, a lot of people started making atheist videos on YouTube, owning, people like Thunderfoot, for example, people like the other guy, the Amazing Atheist, for example, were posting YouTube videos debunking religious people because they're obviously wrong, and they're an easy target. They don't know how to respond to criticism. They don't understand the internet. It's great fun all around, right? Then a bunch of shit happens. Okay, this is where the timeline starts. If the timeline wasn't messy already, this is the beginning of where it starts to get even more messy. Okay, at some point, the fappening happens in 2014, right? The fappening was, if you don't remember, a bunch of celebrity nudes got leaked on 4chan. And this was, at the time, the biggest jump in 4chan's user base ever. A bunch of people heard about this and came to 4chan for the celebrity nudes and started posting there, because it was like 4chan's the cool place where cool things happen. And so suddenly you got a bunch of outsiders, and they don't understand the difference between ironically Nazi posting and genuine Nazi posting. And so they just start to believe that the 4chan is a place for genuine right-wing people, and they fall for the meme. They fell for the meme, and at this point it was irreversible. Before this, there was a possibility, because remember, 4chan has always had somewhat libertarian viewpoints. They were anti-establishment just for the lols, and they were, all about anonymity and free speech and stuff. So you got these new fappening people arriving, and firstly, they are more used to the more normie internet like YouTube, so they are bringing over YouTube. They are bringing influence from YouTubers like the Amazing Atheist and stuff like that, and they don't understand the culture very well. They don't understand the irony very well, and they just take it seriously. That's what the fappening happened. Fast forward even more, the YouTubers that were originally doing atheist shit, they start turning towards the SJW troll compilation type shit at around the same time, because remember, this is it's all linked, that these people who came from outside of 4chan, discovering 4chan culture through the fappening in 2014, are realizing these, like seeing this let's laugh at the popular thing, and currently the predominant ideology, as it still is neoliberalism, aka liberalism, aka a vague image of feminism and shit is involved, capitalism with a smiling face, as they call it, right? And so they don't see that, they don't understand that that's too complex. So instead it's just like, here's the funny SJW people, because SJWs, feminists, these sort of people tend to be, or at least the hand-picked ones, you can very easily hand-pick these people, take them out of context, and some of them are genuinely stupid, just like some people of any ideology will be genuinely stupid, and they tend to be college-educated white people who are posting videos of themselves doing this shit. They don't understand the internet. Plus, Tumblr is a thing. Oh god, I forgot about Tumblr. Tumblr is a thing at this point. Don't worry about it. Tumblr, they had a war with 4chan, and Tumblr tended towards leftism, so that also helped, like, the epic feminism bad, because Tumblr was there was a lot more women on Tumblr, whereas 4chan is, at this point, and still, almost entirely men. So, because of this new atheism movement is shifting towards an anti-feminist movement, and this is because the definition of masculinity is being challenged. Traditional masculine gender roles are being challenged. People are hurt by that, especially the young men who use 4chan, and they think these feminists have taken away my masculine freedoms or whatever, and they it's funny, they do silly things. You can easily make YouTube videos pointing out that they do silly things, and due to YouTube's algorithm, people who watch one of these videos end up down the rabbit hole of watching loads of these videos, including yours truly. This happens to a lot of people back in like 2015, 2014 type of situation. Especially because a lot of people are like young teenagers wondering why they can't get a girlfriend, and 4chan offers an answer. It's because of feminism. So this fits in with the Stormfag invasion, because right-wing people don't like feminists. It fits in with the new atheist movement on YouTube, and it fits in with the fappening invasion. All of these things, because of course fappening is a leaking of nudes, so sorry about that. Fappening is a leaking of nudes, so it's kind of inherently anti-feminist. It all gels together into this new anti-SJW movement. The combination of Stormfag invasion, fappening invasion, YouTube atheism, and Tumblr warfare. So this happens leading up to the big event, 2016, the 2016 election and Donald Trump. This was the moment when the online right wing, which were now solidified as the online right wing, mostly based in 4chan and 8chan, were gathering together for one single goal: get Donald Trump elected. It's questionable how much impact they actually had, but it doesn't matter if they did it or not. What matters is they thought they were all working together for a common goal, a common cause. There were some people who didn't like Trump, but in general, the entire online right is working together for this one thing. Why? It's the same thing as always. For the lols. Trump is very easily memeable. The way he speaks is very easily memeable, right? The fact that he was fighting against the Democratic establishment, right, which is, again, a big people who are not used to the internet and not used to people laughing at them and shit. It was basically like everything came right at the right time, right? Plus, YouTube is blowing up with these anti-feminist videos, and this is where it all starts to get a little downhill, because as these anti-feminist videos and stuff like that, the MRAs, MGTOWs are becoming more and more popular, they're getting views, other people are seeing that and trying to copy them, and these people aren't as charismatic or cool, they might be a bit autistic, they might be a bit less good with language, they're starting to make themselves look a bit silly. But that will come back to bite them later. First of all is this 2016 election, and the thing about this is that it shows the complete ineptitude of liberals to deal with a genuine far-right movement. This has been talked about fucking endlessly. The best 4chan, the online right could do anything they wanted. Firstly, they had a bunch of boomers they recruited. A bunch of boomers went out on their side because boomers like right-wing politics, and they had the internet right? And the only thing that the liberals could do, because liberals aren't properly equipped to fight far-right movements, is to say his name was Drumpf. That was the only thing, which just made them look stupid and made Trump look better. And if you were a leftist and you were trying to use electoral politics to battle against Trump, you had to argue for Hillary Clinton, who is like a terrible person, and so it was just never going to happen. So the right, everyone loves an underdog story. Trump won. Trump winning the election is the worst thing to possibly happen to the right wing. Why? Because now you're in power and you have to watch firsthand as your ideology falls flat on its ass and fails at every possible fucking moment. This is the problem with right-wing ideologies, is they don't work. So even if they get into power, it just makes you look stupid because you're fucked up. And this is terrible. It causes a huge splintering of the right wing. First of all, those boomers that were on your side, that they don't understand the internet, they look stupid. People are laughing at you for being on the side of the boomers. Secondly, you're trying to support Donald Trump as he's doing all this dumb shit. This is why 4D chess became a meme. Because people were having to do more and more mental gymnastics to try and justify their support for Trump. The Trump supporter base is losing rapidly, bleeding supporters as he does more and more stupid shit. I also want to take a quick side note here to mention Lefty Poll. So at a certain point, 8chan split off from 4chan and became its own thing. 8chan is like 4chan, but you can make your own boards. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows this, because it seems to be forgotten, that Lefty Poll, i.e. Poll is the politics board, which is like the right-wing politics board. Lefty Poll, the left-wing politics board, was always just behind Poll in the boards list, sometimes above Poll. There was a huge left-wing population on 8chan. If you want, like, Sterner memes were born from 8chan. All of this shit came from 8chan. There was a huge left-wing population. It wasn't just a Nazi website like everyone thinks. I mean, it was in big part that, but also there was a huge left-wing politics, plus places like BunkerChan and stuff. But I digress. I just want to make sure that the record is straight there, that 4chan was not, and 4chan and 8chan were not just hives of Nazi scum and villainy. They were, there were leftists there too, and they were actually a pretty big deal. Some of the leftists even supported Donald Trump due to, they were like, if this guy actually gets elected, people will be faced with the complete ineptitude of right-wing ideology and convert to the left, which everyone was like, that's dumb, but it turns out it was kind of right. Anyway, so Trump getting elected, the worst possible thing so I'm looking over here because I have some notes. The worst possible thing for the online right. We've had multiple things happen. Firstly, time has passed, and in that time the internet has grown. Since back in the Scientology Tom Cruise days, now everyone knows how to use the internet. 4chan doesn't have the advantage of being epically internet savvy. Now everyone's epically internet savvy. There isn't offline people to troll easily. Everyone knows how the internet works. 4chan doesn't have that advantage. Secondly, we've had liberals have been proven completely inept at defeating Trump's ideology, which means it's time for the further left people to step up. They finally figured out that freaking out and getting into doing the stuff that was previously getting them into the SJW cringe compilations is bad optics, and they've sort of re-established their user base. Now that Trump has been elected, everyone's like, well, fuck, we need a proper opposition, and the online left is born in its current state from Lefty Poll and from outside sources. And leftists start to speak up and they say, hey, these right-wing people, they're kind of not cool anymore, because look, they're in power, they've won, like, it's not really necessarily, it doesn't make you seem cool to just support this boomer ideology that all these boomers are supporting, right? And that is the worst thing an ideology can possibly go through, is to seem uncool. So Trump is bleeding supporters after 2016 because he's just making terrible decision after terrible decision. People are spreading towards the left. They're seeing this alternative, and YouTubers like H-Bomber Guy are making videos doing the same thing that the right was previously doing to the left, to the right now. He's making videos laughing at these far-right idiots. He's doing the same thing. He's cherry-picking people who are on the fringe, like the Golden One, for example. Almost no one gave a shit about the Golden One until H-Bomber Guy started talking about him, and he became a laughingstock, right? And now it's like, well, turns out, hold on, you right-wing people who have been saying you're on the side of facts, logic, you know, that sort of thing, your Jordan Petersons, your Ben Shapiro's, right? Firstly, you got Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. It's no longer fucking Sargon of Akkad and Shoe on Head who are the spearheaders of your movement. It's now these, like, professional speakers like, you know, like Ben Shapiro and fucking Jordan Peterson, who are like basically pop philosophers. It's no longer you know, this cool underground community you're a part of. It's just the mainstream, and they say dumb shit and they have no theoretical basis behind it. So leftists who are boring fucks who love to read books are like, well, you see, I've read many books and therefore I can tell you why this is wrong. This is just factually inaccurate. Capitalism, I understand it better than you, and here's why it doesn't work. That sort of thing. And you know, then you have YouTubers like ContraPoints coming up, and you have the resurgence of this transgender rights movement and stuff. And all these people are now actually face to face with the straw man they constructed in their minds, because the SJW that they constructed never really existed. And now you have these actual leftists speaking up and showing that they're not these illogical, crazy people, and suddenly, and plus Trump bleeding supporters, and you've got a massive flocking to the left. But the people who do want to stay right wing, they are faced with a choice. Either we have to ardently stick to our guns and defend Donald Trump, which is making you look stupider and stupider every day, or you have to splinter off into some sort of sub-ideology that makes you able to both stay right wing and disavow Donald Trump. And that's what happened. This is where shit gets fucking crazy, because in the background of all this, 4chan, due to the 2016 election, the fappening in 2014 was firstly the biggest jump in user base. 2016 election made the fappening look like fucking nothing. Huge jump in 4chan user base. During the election, it was great and fine, because everyone was working together to get Trump elected. Once Trump's elected, now you have a whole website overrun with Redditors and new fags, and they don't know what they're doing, they haven't learned, they don't know the culture, they don't know what they're doing, the site's ruined, the site has gone to shit. During this time, most people have a Twitter account. Twitter allows you to be pseudonymous, not anonymous, but pseudonymous, right? You can have a pseudonym. And Twitter is a very good place for recruiting people. People are slowly bleeding to Twitter, the bleeding edge of the right wing. We can no longer call them the 4chan right wing, the bleeding edge of the right wing. They have their Twitter accounts, and this is the thing. The timeline is sketchy here, because there isn't a 1 year where everyone jumped ship to Twitter. No, it happened slowly. People started moving to Twitter, and now we're faced with the right wing is faced with a problem. The problem is this: firstly, 4chan, our nice cool place, is now a not so cool Reddit place. Secondly, also some stuff was going on with like 4chan and 8chan, as in like in terms of moderation, that a lot of people didn't like. I mean, that's always been the case, but it was getting worse because the site was more busy than it had ever been before. So that was happening. People are bleeding over to Twitter. So God, the timeline is jumbled here. It's hard to get this shit straight. So, people are now having to actually face a competent left wing online who are no longer like years behind the 4chan epic online people. Now everyone's an epic online person, and 4chan doesn't have the advantage on their home turf. Plus, they're now bleeding to Twitter, where it's not ideologically homogenous. There's a lot of different ideologies all competing for battlegrounds, and their previous battles with like logic and reason that they had hounded so much as their form, like their platform, is falling apart as it comes to pass that their logic and reason was not logical or reasonable at all, and they are just idiots. Which means you have something like, for example, Shoe on Head was a major player in the anti-SJW YouTube scene who shifted, became left-wing, and now is like makes left-wing YouTube videos about how bad the government is and shit, and is massively popular. The people who want to stay right-wing are basically fucked, because their ideology has been proven, literally, irrefutably. The thing they fought for, to put Trump in power, is failing miserably. It's been proven to just not work. What the fuck do they do? How do they allow themselves to stay with this weird ideology and not go crazy from knowing that they're wrong? How do they do it? It's genius, let me tell you. They looked at history and they realized something that has always been a key part of the right. Now, this is how ideologies work. This is how memes work. It's like natural selection. If something isn't able to reproduce itself, it'll die out. So, ideologies that are able to reproduce themselves very successfully will continue and grow and stuff, just like same as natural selection in evolution, right? How has historically the right dealt with the fact that they're just plain wrong? Have something that doesn't require logic and reason. It's such a popular stereotype that there's hundreds of films about it. Indiana Jones type shit. Nazis love occult shit. They love the occult. Whether or not it's actually historically accurate doesn't matter. It's a meme that's been planted in people's head that Nazis love occult shit. Nazis love weird religious shit. And religious symbolism fits great with right-wing ideology, because right-wing ideology is all about harkening back to a rose-tinted past where everything was great for the white man, you know? They're both, they want to find a reason to stay racist even though racism isn't like true. They want to be racist, but they don't know how to stay racist, and so they have two options to stay racist, and they kind of intermingle, which is, firstly, you got your scientific racism, which is actually pseudo-scientific racism, but it was very popular for a while, especially, you know, while Darwin's theory was kind of new. They were like, why can't humans also be, some of them are better, white people are better? That was what they were doing. And then there's why are white people better? Well, you know, we don't really have an argument for that. So, religions are very, very good at perpetuating themselves, and I need to do a little bit of a history lesson here. I don't really know much about the rest of the world, but I know about English history. During the Middle Ages, almost everyone in England was Christian. Probably 99% of people were Christian. There were probably some merchants from far off distant lands who weren't Christian. There were probably some Jews somewhere or other, but almost everyone was Christian. Almost everyone went to church every Sunday. Christianity was huge. The church had huge power in England. They went to church, they couldn't read or write, which means they couldn't read the Bible, and the sermons were in Latin, which no one spoke. So, no one actually knew what the Bible said at this time. All they did so this is when Christianity was most popular. No one knew what the Bible said. No one knew what their fucking pastors were saying. They just knew symbology, which represents certain beliefs. That's exactly what a meme is on the internet. That's exactly how memes spread on the internet. You don't have to understand the idea behind it. If you're a leftist and you want to talk about fucking leftist theory, you kind of have to understand the theory behind it. If you're right wing and you want to talk about religion, you can just say, it doesn't work like that. It's religion. It's about faith. You don't have to have any proof or anything. So, maybe our racism is justified because God made it that way. God made it so white people were the best. That's how it happened. And, then we ended up in the modern era, you know. Okay, so various things happened. Oh god, it's so fucking messy because this is now like very, very recent history. It's hard to get it straight. We haven't had enough time for the dust to settle to see what's happening, so it's very recent history. It's kind of hard. Okay, so a few ideologies become popular. First of all, in order to fight the left who actually read books, the right are now going to have to actually read books and not just claim facts and logic, because, you know, previously it was like, these SJWs are so illogical, you don't even need to read a book to know that they're stupid. Whereas now, these leftists are actually making some pretty good points, and they've read books and shit, and they kind of know their theoretical baseline, because they're not liberals anymore. They're like communists and anarchists, and they read their theory. And so the right is like, well, fuck, now we need some theoretical baselines behind us. So they read some books. The first one they read is Industrial Society and Its Future by Ted Kaczynski. And Ted Kaczynski is very memeable. Primitivism becomes a thing. Next, they read Julius Evola. Julius Evola is like, bro, crazy religious shit. And they're like, that's kind of sick, bro. Because people love hidden knowledge. This is a key point in religions and ideologies in general. People love to know something that other people don't know. And if you can make it seem like you know the cool religious thing that the other people don't know about, you feel good about yourself. Because you can always say you're wrong because you don't have access to the secret knowledge that I have access to. And then people read some other shit, like, for example, Nick Land. And now I've just explained Nick Land. Nick Land was a bloke from England in the 90s, and he was all cool. He went to jungle raves, he was dancing to jungle music, and he was reading philosophy, he was reading Kant, and he was reading Marx, and he was reading all this shit, and he was like, bro, I have an idea. What if modernity is mostly defined by a series of positive feedback loops? What if, like, for example, the Marxist theory of how money works? You get money, it goes into a commodity, it goes back into money plus profit, it circles back on itself, profit ever rising, instability eventually crashes. What if everything's kind of like that in modernity? Everything's these weird, unstable, positive feedback loops. Let me write some books about that, except normal theory is just boring. Let's make it fucking crazy. And so he writes about a bunch of time-traveling lemurs with his buddies in the CCRU, and these buddies are like feminists, and like Marxists, like Mark Fisher and shit, and they're all writing about this crazy new theory called accelerationism, which they didn't invent, but they're big into it, and it's very relevant in the modern age, and everyone's like, wow, this is really cool cutting edge philosophy, and you're writing in this interesting way and you really like Lovecraft, and you're putting Lovecraft in it, and it's really crazy and cool. And then Nick Land's like, bro, capitalism is really good at morphing itself, manipulating itself into all sorts of new modes. It's really, really good at that. All that stuff that Marxist was saying before about how capitalism works, it won't make sense if capitalism can mutate in all these crazy ways. Capitalism is so good at perpetuating itself that there is no longer you got Mark Fisher over here, he's like capitalism is so homogenous that people don't even have the ability to conceive of a significantly different future without capitalism, because that's how crazy capitalism is. And then Nick Land's like, yeah, bro, capitalism is pretty crazy, and these guys in China, they're doing a pretty cool, crazy type of capitalism too that seems really good at perpetuating itself. And yo, isn't this kind of sick? Isn't that kind of fucking cool? Isn't capitalism kind of like an AI that's like kind of fucking sick? And then he becomes like right wing, and so that way Nick Land is the trendy philosopher, and he's kind of right wing, and a bunch of people who were right wing are like, well, now I have a philosopher who's kind of trendy and right wing, like, bro, that's fucking sick. And so a bunch of accelerationisms happen, and one of those accelerationisms that happens on Twitter is some guys like, okay, let's think about words. Let's think about words. What's a word? Where was I? Oh yes. So Nick Land happens, accelerationism happens. It's big on Twitter because it's got good memes, and it's about the internet, and people love things that are about the internet. And so then this guy on Twitter, he's like, possibly two guys, they start thinking about words. And this is the word they're thinking about. They're thinking about the word Proto-Indo-European, which was a type of people, a group of people. They lived just near India. They lived above India, near the Indus River, and they were chilling and shit. And that's where all modern European people come from, modern Indian people come from Proto-Indo-Europeans, which they used to have a different name. And the different name they used to have was Indo-Aryans. And this guy was like, I've heard that word before, that's what Hitler said. And he was kind of right wing anyway, and he was like, bro, what if Aryans are the true ones and these Christians are fake ones? Because Christianity comes from the Middle East, but these Aryans, they came to, that's where we are, that's me, that's the white people, like me, I'm the cool white people. And so he was like, yo, these people, I wonder what they're about. And so he read this book called The Vedas. Bunch of books actually. He didn't really read them, he just kind of skimmed through them because they're really fucking long and they're all in Sanskrit, and he skimmed through them and he was like, no one's ever reading this. I could just say it says anything I want, I could just make shit up, I could just this is so fucking long and boring, no one is ever going to check if I'm right or not, so I could just make it up. And then he read it in the book, he read this word, it said Kali Yuga, and he was like, Kali Yuga, that sounds like a band or something, that sounds really cool, I feel like I've heard that in my favourite anime, Neon Genesis Evangelion or something. And he read it and he was like, well, Kali Yuga, that's a cool sounding word, what does it mean? And he googled it and it was like, oh, it's a cycle in Hinduism where the world sort of goes to shit for a while and then gets better. And he looked around at himself and he was like, that's like now, the world is kind of going to shit now, even though and then he was like, what if I got my Nick Land brain and I got my Indian brain, and I was like, they're the same brain, and he invented Kali Yuga accelerationism, and that became, and it's good for memes, and the way they spread it is they use the hidden knowledge method of religion spreading, which is like, hey, look over my Twitter account, I'm posting about these crazy conspiracy theories that I just googled. I googled a conspiracy theory and I typed out what I read in Wikipedia. Isn't that cool? Click on my account and you might find more hidden knowledge. By the way, I hate the Jews. That's what he did, and it was very successful. A lot of people really liked it because it makes you seem cool, and you're allowed to do drugs and watch anime while also being right wing, and you don't have to be a boring Christian like your parents. Oh my god, it's genius. And then another guy, his name was Landshark, he was like, fuck that, but I kind of like Christianity, but I don't like their boring Christianity, like the Catholicism. They're kind of like mainstream, and like I'm kind of a hipster. I don't really like it. And they don't have like cool cloaks. I wonder if there's like a type of Christianity where they have cool cloaks with like skulls and shit. Oh bro, oh my god, bro, there's like these fucking Orthodox Christians in like Greece and in like Hungary and in like Russia and shit, and they're dressing in all these cool clothes. They kind of like black metal singers. Like, what? And they have this crazy music goes, and it's like, wow, I'm gonna be one of those, and I'm gonna be a bodybuilder as well. And here's why they're bodybuilders. Okay, there was this guy called Bronze Age Mindset. He wrote a book. It's shit, but he was basically like, back in the day, it's to do with Ted Kaczynski. Remember, primitivism became popular because right wing is all about harkening back to a past with rose-tinted goggles. The past never really existed. The past is far behind us. The future doesn't exist. Anyway, it's all about that. And primitivism is like, well, if we went really far back in the past where everything was great because everyone was muscly, and then this Bronze Age Mindset guy is like, yeah, that was fucking sick. Also, I like bodybuilding because it's fun, and no one can make an argument that lifting weights and exercising is bad for you. It's clearly good for you, even though being fucking built is not really that useful in the modern age for anything except getting bitches. But no one's gonna argue that it's a bad influence on. There's not really an argument you can make against bodybuilding. So this ideology was very successful. Hey guys, look at this. We're having a debate with someone on Twitter, an argument. You're having a shouting match with someone on Twitter, and you say post physique, and they're skinny. Their argument's invalid because it's the religion. I don't have to explain it. It's Christian or something, and it doesn't have to have a logical explanation. It means they don't have dedication or something to build themselves into a completely impractical bodybuilder, because apparently that's what people look like in the past, even though it's probably not what people look like in the past. Whatever, that's what people look like in the past according to me. And then this guy called Landshark, he was like, yeah, that's sick. Also, bodybuilding is sick. Also, consume raw meat products. That's the thing I care about now. And then a bunch of other people came in. They were like, yo, let's do all these other weird combinations of Nick Land and other religions. And then we had the modern Twitter left and Twitter right, and the reason it happened is because their ideology is nonsense, and they can't defend it with logical logic and reason like they used to champion. They have just turned to, well, yeah, we know it's bullshit, but that's because it's religious bullshit, and therefore you can't prove us wrong because religions can't be proven wrong, because I don't understand language and I've never read Wittgenstein.